Today's episode is brought to you by Tapcaf Transmissions, the brand new Star Wars Expanded Universe podcast, brought to you by myself and Corey Loses. Tapcaf Transmissions is essentially a Star Wars Expanded Universe book club. We're covering Legends novels in order, starting with the post-Endor era. Episode 1, which is available now, was on the Truce at Bakura, and the next episode, which will be live streamed and then available on the 13th of June, is on X-Wing Rogue Squadron. The episodes are available not only on YouTube, but we're rolling out across various podcasting platforms. So far, we're on Spotify and Podbean. Links to everything down in the description. Anyway, run the intro. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Legends lore video. Today's content won't be as scripted as my videos usually are, but I thought it'd be interesting to sort of talk through a technology that I think the Empire could have made serious use of during the Galactic Civil War. And it's a bit of technology that I actually mentioned in a prior video when I was talking about redesigning Super Star Destroyers. So a bit of background. As the essential guide to warfare and basically every piece of Galactic Civil War era media shows, the Alliance was remarkably less powerful than the Empire, but survived due to their mobility. It was hard to track Alliance ships, and it was even harder to keep them in one place. Sure, interdictor cruisers did exist, but they were limited and expensive to make, and the Alliance usually chose its targets selectively anyway. Basically, a group of X-Wings and Y-Wings would jump out of hyperspace, attack some soft Imperial target, or even a Star Destroyer before it could launch its fighters, then retreat. This tactic was actually so important to the Alliance that Starfighter Command was perhaps the most important arm of the entire military. The question is, how do you deal with a stateless faction like the Alliance who is effectively employing guerrilla warfare? For all intents and purposes, it's too late to either walk back on the TIE program and introduce a new line of more effective starfighters, and the same can be said of the ISD, which was the backbone of the Imperial Navy, but not really well suited to handling this kind of flexible, fast threat. What's more, even if the starfighter advantage wasn't on the Alliance's side, they succeeded just because they attacked with such efficiency. That being said, I do think there's one conceptual bit of technology which could have existed in the Star Wars universe and been the linchpin to the Imperial's defeat of the Alliance. So let's go back and take a brief look at the basics of interdiction technology. The idea is interdictors stop an enemy from being able to jump to hyperspace. They would effectively generate a gravity well which could only be bypassed by a ship escaping it at sublight speeds. The Empire typically used interdiction cruisers and even Star Destroyers, very large vessels, often not super well armed, and as I mentioned earlier, in very short supply. That being said, the Star Destroyers that did exist were immensely useful, and were the last thing many Rebel pilots saw. Going head-to-head with an interdiction Star Destroyer, especially as a small freighter or frigate, was about infinitely more frightening than going against a normal Star Destroyer. The Imperial war machine was such that in a head-to-head fight, the only option was to run. Obviously, interdictors prevented that. But what if I told you there was, at the very least, a theoretical way to utilize interdiction technology without having to sink hundreds of millions of credits into new capital ships? The answer, I think, is pretty simple. The use of interdiction missiles and interdiction mines. The former, and to a degree the latter, actually already exist in Star Wars Legends. The New Republic and the Galactic Federation of Free Alliances used small interdiction devices placed strategically along key hyperspace routes throughout the Yuuzhan Vong War. The idea is pretty simple. The mines obviously have a lot less power than an interdiction Star Destroyer, they have a smaller radius, and typically they can't be operated as precisely. At the Battle of Dathomir, the Hapans used interdiction mines to prevent Warlord Zinj from escaping in his Super Star Destroyer. The lack of precision comes from the fact that the mines can't easily be turned on and off, or at least Hapan mines couldn't, so once they're launched, both you and your enemy are essentially locked within an area for a given period of time. And what's more, Labyrinth of Evil actually talks about devices of this type operating since at least the Clone Wars. So going back to my prior video, I discussed the fact that all Super Star Destroyers should carry with them a cache of hyperspace missiles. I did think that this would be a unique technology, but it turns out the Hapens actually fire their bombs from what's essentially missile tubes, so the technology is basically already there. I would want every single Star Destroyer in the Empire to be armed with at least 5 Interdiction missiles. Now, this wouldn't be nearly enough technology to shut down travel throughout a system, rather it's meant for a more tactical use. If you run into rebels, pirates, or anyone likely to escape, you fire this missile. That way, you can at least launch your ties to deal with starfighters looking to flee, and you can engage capital ships. That sounds expensive, but if you consider the amount of munitions the Empire is producing already, I think it's feasible. If missile launch tubes somehow weren't compatible, another option would be simply to drop the Interdiction mine out of the hangar, attach a rocket to it, and basically shoot it at the enemy. I know what you're saying. Well, that sounds really good and all. If it's possible, why didn't the Empire do it? First of all, because I'm reading way too much into a fictional universe, but also I'm not 100% certain whether the miniaturization technology needed for these kind of missiles was completely there yet, at least by the time of the Galactic Civil War. Still, if it wasn't, we know that both the Hapens and the Vagari in the unknown regions had made some effort on the science. Now, despite the fact that these two cultures are incredibly isolationist, at least when it comes to the Empire, it makes sense that the technology wouldn't have been shared, but I see no reason why the Empire wouldn't have been at least aware that such a thing existed and capable of producing their own variant. The Black Fleet Crisis tells us that the Empire was heavily researching into how to weaponize hyperspace. However, it does seem like they were focusing on using hyperspace itself as a method to transport objects. But given there's at least a solid research foundation and the fact that they used other gravitational-based weaponry in the past, I see no reason why some sort of mobile interdiction mine or missile couldn't have been developed. Worst case scenario, you attach mine layers to your major Imperial fleets. We know that, at the very least, would be possible. Add this all together and the Alliance isn't running nearly as often as they were before. Ideally, when a Star Destroyer encounters a rebel fleet attempting to flee, or if they're raided by a quick strike force, these interdiction missiles could be used at the very least to make escape much more difficult. Again, this would require very precise firing and would be much less effective than an interdictor Star Destroyer, but it's a much more flexible interdiction alternative. Also, from a cost perspective, I see no reason why the mines couldn't be recovered afterwards. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I would love to hear what you guys think. I know it's been a while since I've done a hashtag AskEck question of the day. That's because I'm preparing to go to EA Play on June 5th, and I'm trying to get as many videos done in advance as I can. However, as a quasi AskEck, I have had a few people ask about this, I will likely be doing some sort of meetup, and if you're in LA or the surrounding area between June 5th and June 10th, keep an eye open. Me, Star Wars Explained, and likely some others will most likely be doing something where you can come see us if you're interested. Anyway, as always guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. Stay safe, have a great week, and of course, may the Force be with you.